And so when our mind is collected, we see clearly. We are able to discern things the way that they are, without distractions, without judgments and opinions and ideas and concepts and our own flavors and taints that come and distort reality. And when we see things for what they are, clearly we're able to let them go, allowing the flow of life to happen. Tonight, we are diving in the deep waters of the Buddha's teachings. And we will be exploring an aspect of the teaching that is called Paticca Samuppada, that is called dependent origination. And we will casually learn how we become us. How does identity arise? How we create our sense of personality, our attachments, our likes and dislikes. And we will explore how this whole process arises from causes, many causes in fact. And one after the other, we will go deeper and deeper and deeper into the depth of the psyche, our psyche, and understand how we can create our own problems and also can come out of this. So the teaching I will be drawing from tonight is called the Upanisa Sutta. And I like to call it dependent liberation. So you have the chart here. And we will be following along this chart. And on one side you have dependent liberation. And then on the other side is dependent origination. And so this teaching on dependent origination is quite profound. It cannot be explained in one talk. But we will try to explore and understand it as much as we can. But this teaching is special because it does not only give the dependent origination, the way we create problems for ourselves, but also it gives the way out. Dependent origination is concerned about the first two noble truths, the arising, the truth of troublesomeness or trouble, dukkha, suffering, and its origin, how it arises. And the way out is concerned with the last two noble truths, which is there is a way out. There is the end of trouble. There is a way that we can escape from that, and the path to do so. And this is all included in this teaching. And I've come up with this little chart with images because it can be really dense and complicated sometimes, but hopefully that will be a little lighter. And so mainly this exploration tonight is about understanding perhaps how consciousness is a completely fabricated process And this will help us understand the last stages of the meditation after the still mind. But also it's a thorough understanding of how distractions arise, how we take them personal, and also how to really see that clearly and let that go. And so it's very good knowledge for anywhere you are in this path. The Buddha starts and he says, I say that it is by knowing and seeing, monks, that the mental distractions become still, not by not knowing and not seeing, but knowing and seeing what? This is matter. This is matter arising. This is matter passing away. These are felt experiences. These are felt experiences arising. These are felt experiences passing away. These are perceptions. These are perception arising. These are perceptions passing away. And this is consciousness. This is consciousness arising. This is consciousness passing away. These are mental activities. These are mental activities arising. These are mental activities passing away. Knowing and seeing in this way, monks, there is the stilling of all distractions. Now this can sound a little cryptic, but this talk is also an exploration of the link between these two aspects of letting go and anicca, transience, impermanence. Because when we let go, what we see is just phenomena arising and passing away. It is when we hold that some aspects of our lives stay and we are conscious of that. But in reality, it arises and then it passes away sooner or later. So the sooner we let it go, the sooner we accept it, the sooner we relax it, the sooner we actually see things for what they are, arising, passing away. And a few of you have probably started to hear me say this on interviews, in the still mind, the clear mind. Things are arising, things are passing away. There's little maybe words or images or little memories or little blinking and little geometrical forms or whatever it is, lights, perceptions arising, perceptions passing away. And as we continue not holding to these, then they just keep going. And the release process keeps happening. And more we're just aware of things, this flow of life. Does everybody have a pen? Because this is also slightly interactive tonight. These are words from my own translations. And I will be giving you, there is the Pali equivalent. The Pali is always there, the original language of the Buddha. But I will be giving you the classical terms as we go, just so if you already know these terms or some of them, then you can actually orient yourself through the whole chart. This will be a call and response tonight. So the Buddha liked to do this, in fact, with his audience. We'll go through the whole sequence, and the way that it goes is that it starts from the stilling of all distractions, the asavakaya, the stilling of the mind. And we have the little picture of the Buddha. And so the stilling of the mind is basically referring to just, completely awakened mind, or the completely liberated mind. So that there is no more defilements, no more streams going out. The mind is fully liberated. And we will work our way backwards. But monks, I say, in this stillness, the experience of that stilling comes from a cause. It is not independent. In the Buddha's understanding, everything has a cause. It always comes from somewhere. What is the cause for the experience of this stillness, of the stilling of all mental distractions? What is the cause for the experience of that stillness? And here, if I look at stilling of the mind, is number 10. And if I look at number 9, unagitation, viraga. And this is also known in the classical understanding as dispassion. And asavakaya, the stilling of the mind, this is known as the destruction of the taints. So you can already see a slight shift in in language, in understanding. And so when we are unagitated, and this is the Kanchanjunga, the third highest peak in the Himalayas, and when one is unagitated, they are like a big solid mountain. Viraga is interpreted as dispassion, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's not that it doesn't work, but nowadays the word dispassion doesn't have necessarily a good connotation. It gravitates around like depression and gravitates around actually not so good mental states. So I'm staying away from that word because it can really easily be misinterpreted. But unagitation is more like, is closer to what we actually want to achieve. So a mind that is not agitated. Yeah, you could say it's dispassionate, but it's just a very different flavor. There's one missing. Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's supposed to be liberation before that. Vimutti. Yeah, I just noticed that. You're the guinea pigs of the new chart. So just before that there is liberation, vimutti. And then there is unagitation, viraga. But this unagitation or freedom from agitation comes from a cause. It is not independent. It arises from something. What is the cause of unagitation? Disengagement. Does that make sense? Yes, when we completely let go, we become very still, unagitated. And this is called Nibbāna in Pali, usually translated as disenchantment. And this disengagement comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for disengagement? Discernment, yes, seeing clearly. This is called yatha bhuta jnana dassana. This is also understood as vipassana. Seeing things the way that they are. You would hear Go and Anicca say that quite a lot on his retreats. Yatha bhuta jnana dassana. And so we have to go down a little further, and then I will explain a little bit more, because now there's just not enough. But this discernment comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for discernment? Samadhi, yes, mental collectedness. And so we have this beautiful picture of this kid or child riding an elephant's back in the sunset. Looks like a collected mind, very peaceful. And so when our mind is collected, we see clearly. We are able to discern things the way that they are, without distractions, without judgments and opinions and ideas and concepts and our own flavors and taints that come and distort reality. And when we see things for what they are, clearly we're able to let them go, to let everything go, to let the flow of life, allowing the flow of life to happen. And so I like to yathabhuta jnana dassana, discernment or seeing clearly. This is also the 4 resting places of awareness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And I like to compare the 4 foundations of mindfulness to the desert, with the sand dunes and the sky, and being aware of body is like the sand dunes, and the sensations as sensations is like the sand. And being aware of mind is like the open sky, and being aware of Dhamma, mental states or Dhamma principles, is like all the clouds, all the things that happen in the sky. And when we see these things for what they are, it's rid of all concepts, it's rid of all jungle, it's rid of all taints. And so we really see clearly like that beautiful image of the desert. And then whatever we're holding on, we can actually see and let go and let it pass. And this mental collectedness comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for mental collectedness? Happiness. Very good. Been attending to the morning puja and all the talks that I've been giving. Good. And this happiness comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for happiness? Relaxing passaddhi, relaxing the body. And see here we are getting into the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is what we're talking about. Relaxing the body comes from a cause, or being relaxed and calm in body, it comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for being relaxed in body? Joy, and high-minded joy. This is not any kind of joy. The Buddha called this niramisa piti. So it's not just the joy of getting a bag of chips at the grocery store and eating a nice bag of whatever your favorite kind of chip is, ketchup or salt and vinegar. I haven't had chips in like years. But we're not talking about this happiness. We're talking about the happiness of letting go of unwholesome states, the mental joy, niramisa piti, which is connected to mental development, wholesome mental development. So meditation, spreading loving kindness, bringing up joy, the smile, compassion, forgiveness. There is a lightness, there is a joy that comes from that, and this is that joy. And that joy comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for that high-minded joy? Relief, pamoja. Yes. I guess I'll explain the whole thing when we go down to the last one, and then I'll explain a little bit more. And this relief, this pamoja, comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for relief? Confidence or faith, saddha. I guess we need one more element to it to actually explain it better. And then this is the big transition. And this confidence comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause of confidence or faith? Dukkha. Trouble. Don't panic. We will go through it. We will explain what that means. And so when we come upon trouble, we have this, this is where we have the choice. This is also called samvega. Samvega is also that sense of urgency. This is what brings us to the path, and the story, I think it was yesterday's question about how did I become a monk, which is not different than pretty much everybody. How did any monk become a monk? Usually, well, it's because there's some difficulties and we're trying to find answers, and that brings us further, that gives us faith, that gives us confidence. But also this drives us to seek a way, to find a way, and then we find this teaching somehow, whether it's in this tradition or that tradition, but we're all here because we're encountered the Buddha's teaching. And so this is also why we're saying that this faith is arising, because now we've seen dukkha, we've seen trouble, and we've looked for a way, and now we find this teaching, this on mental states and how to break free from this dukkha. And we have faith, we have confidence now arising in this meditation practice, in the teachings of the Buddha. And while we practice, then that relief arises, because the teachings work. If you let go of anger, you bring up loving kindness instead, and you forgive the people that you need to forgive. You be compassionate, loving and kind. You develop smiling, relaxing your body. Then of course relief comes up. Anger, jealousy, hatred, when you see these states for what they are, as just this basically eating you from the inside, they're never going to help you. And the Buddha is putting that on a golden plate for us, and we just practice that, and then that relief comes. And when we make much of it, then the relief becomes joy. It becomes that piti. It's something that we can actually feed on. And then our whole body becomes calm. And these are the two wings to awakening. This is how I like to call it. Joy, or mental uplift, and tranquility, calming down, relaxing the body. And this will always bring you in the right direction. Uplifting the mind and letting go. Letting go of all unwholesome states, all the tension. And by doing this continuously, happiness, ease comes up in our life, in every aspect, but mainly because our mind now is just happy. When the mind is happy, that's it. Everything is fine. So happiness is a state of mind. It's not outside of us. It's something we cultivate. And when we do this over and over again, then that happiness becomes so well developed and so established that the mind, when it is happy, the mind it is not looking outwards for happiness. It has it. Why would it look outwards? It's happy here and now, so it's not distracted. And when it's not distracted, it's collected. So it's not scattered. Because we get scattered trying to find happiness out there. But when we're happy, the mind becomes collected. Because it has happiness. It doesn't really care anymore about. Of course, you still need to do all these things to be alive, and that's good, no problem. But first it's in the mind. And so just to catch you up to speed with the translations here, samadhi would be concentration in the usual context. Sukha is, yes, happiness. That doesn't really change. Passaddhi is usually translated as tranquility. Piti is usually translated as, well, there's a few variations on this, but rapture. Rapture. Pamoja is usually often translated as gladness. I also translate it as gladness in some instances. Depends. And then saddha would be faith in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. I just like this this picture of this little samanera, this novice monk, who's just like freshly reborn, and he's like, I'm not doing that again. He's going forth. He's like, no, this is the last time. And confidence. He's got a lot of confidence. He's really going forth. And so now you're wondering why I put my composting toilet at number 12. I used to have 25 acres of forest in eastern Canada, and I sold everything when I left for become a monk, and I built this tiny house for myself, and I had a composting toilet. And this is it. You're privy to my. But this is because at that time I was also a market gardener, organic vegetable gardener, and really interested in going back to the land, because I wasn't really happy with the way that we were living as a human species. And trying to find another way of doing things that would be maybe perhaps a little bit more sustainable. And that was my initiative. And by homesteading and gardening and trying to be self-sufficient, I had a lot of interesting insights. But this principle here is just that any good gardener will know that you need compost to grow a garden. And compost is all of the stuff that you don't use in life, and all of the junk, or what we call junk, and all of the dung, literally, because this is obviously what it is. But composting is magic, because you turn everything, all the waste, all the worst possible things that you could just like think that you don't want to ever use, and actually it grows the best garden. Like you actually need it to grow a beautiful garden. And it's the same thing for us in life. We come upon problems, and we come upon hindrances, we come upon sorrow and sadness and challenges. But in the end, when we actually know how to harness these, it becomes compost for our inner garden. And the more you have of it, the better. And so sometimes it can be a tedious job to deal with all that compost. But after a while, the more hard time you've been through, actually the more tools you will have, and the more it will nourish your garden. And my teacher, Bhante would always say, the hindrances are your teacher. And this is that link. Your hindrances, everything that comes up, the distractions in the mind, they're not to be fought against. They're not your enemy, they're your friend. They're your teacher. They're actually showing you what's in the mind. If there's agitation, if the main flavor is worry, if the main flavor is sadness, it's just because it's been input there. This is just the way the mind's been conditioned. And when it arises, it's just the mind saying, hey, this is the way I'm used to behave. It's not something to fight against. It's actually a gift. It's telling you what to do, in fact. It's telling you exactly what is there. And so when we learn to take all of the hardships that we've gone through and all of the challenges and turn that into compost, then we're the richest people. Because then you can grow a beautiful garden and harvest a lot, and you can even share with people. So that's beautiful. And then for me, the quote from the Buddha that represents dependent origination in its most simple expression is when he says, whatever one frequently thinks about and reflects upon over and over again, this becomes the inclination of the mind. So just like this, every moment of our lives, we condition our mind, whether we want it or not. And so whatever we put in front of us is actually making an imprint on the mind. Everything that we're developing, everything that we're experiencing is actually getting hardwired inside of us, slowly, slowly, slowly. And so what we do here is we learn to kind of completely change the program, the software, and I'll get to that in a moment. And this trouble comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for trouble? Now this is puzzling for some. Birth. And my teacher would say this is the birth of action. There's two ways in which dependent origination can be understood. One is from many lifetimes. So it does explain the transmigration of consciousness from body to body. Just on a light note. But it also can be interpreted and understood in a very practical way here and now. And if we want to understand the creation of karma, the creation, how we create our own karmic baggage, and how to deal with that in the tangible meditation practice and life in general, this would be the birth of action. And I'll explain all of this as we go reverse into it. And by the way, number 12, dukkha is usually translated as suffering. So that's the classical term. I find that term a little bit strong. Suffering. It's not false, but dukkha actually just means unpleasant or just troublesome. Not necessarily suffering. There's other words for suffering in the Pali language. Suffering is more like I feel like it's a bit more intense. But this could be just like a troublesome experience. And so birth comes from the birth of action or the birth of karma or blind reactions. This is how I usually call it. Blind reactions. Comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for blind reactions? Habitual tendencies, yes, bhava. And so here, because we have all of these habit patterns, we just react in certain ways to certain stimuli. So whenever, if our mind's more inclining towards like, let's say impatience, then there's chances that if somebody says something not so nice to us, we'll retaliate or say something not so nice to them either. And that's just because at this point it has become unconscious. It has become inbuilt. This is a habit pattern. This is part of that beingness. And we just retaliate, for example. And that is the blind reaction or the birth of a new action. And by that time it's too late. That this you can't really change. It's like you can change habit patterns, you can change habitual tendencies, but when it gets to the actual action, birth of action, then it's too late. It's already done. So that's how karma gets created. And much of it is unconscious because these habit patterns are just solidified. Because they come from a cause, they are not independent. What is the cause for habitual tendencies? Attachment. Yes. And I didn't write it there, but usually there's two ways to understand habitual tendencies, or bhava. And I also like to understand it as that is the sense of identity, that beingness, bhava. And so here you have a picture of my sister and my dad. That was a long time ago. And they're just like identical, kind of. One is big, one is small. They're just like looking on the horizon together. It's kind of cute, but it's also just pointing at this, when we grow up, we just want to be like our parents. And we pick up so much habitual tendencies from them. And in fact, dependent origination is really easy to see in children, or the most easy to see in children. Because children are like sponges. They're just soaking it up, like everything that they're seeing, everybody that they're... So you can tell, when they say something, it's like, that was your dad, or that was your mom. Because they just like repeat whatever they've heard. They want to be like daddy and mommy, so of course. And so that's kind of how it starts too. It starts from a very young age. And it's not an unwholesome thing, but that's just the way that it works. The expression, monkey see, monkey do. So whatever we like and look up to, we kind of copy that and we just like take it in, and that becomes a habit pattern. And it becomes part of our identity. And this more compact sense of identity is nothing but all of our accumulated attachments. And so whatever we've taken as pleasant, something that we've wanted, something that we don't like, that we don't want, then we take that and we repeat that over and over again, and then it creates these attachments. Oh, I'm a popcorn kind of guy. I don't like chips. I just like popcorn. Oh, for me it's the opposite. I like popcorn. I don't like popcorn. I like chips. And the thing is that there's some things that in life that we like, and there's some things that we don't like, and then we grow into these things, and we really develop attachment around these things, and that becomes part of our identity. And this is, and we have a lot of that. And so this is how that process happens slowly. And the picture at attachment is, this is the propagation room in the greenhouse I used to work. This is where I would start all of my seedlings. And attachment is really those trays where we actually propagate all of the things that we like. We just multiply and multiply because this is what we want to harvest in our lives. And then we plant that. And that this is creating this garden of identity, this garden of me. This is where we code our software. And this is where it's going to loop back into sankhara, so mental activities. So just bear with me here. And attachments, by the way, upadana is usually called clinging. This is the classical term for it. Bhava is it's usually understood as becoming. And these attachments, this attachment comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause of attachment? Wanting Yes, tanha. This is usually called craving. That's the classical term. I don't know, for me, when I say craving, I imagine just a big, like, black monster with... So it's really intense, and it's like drooling. But tanha is just also discontent, or just dissatisfaction, not being content with how things are and wanting it to be a different way. And so this is me and my sister. And I'm doing this pouty face because she's holding a caterpillar, and I want to hold it because I want to be like my sister. And this is how dukkha arises. So I want to hold the caterpillar, but I can't because my sister has it, and so I'm not happy. And so it can also be seen as this. So, you know, craving is like, but craving is just, you know, it can also be light like this. So it doesn't have to be really heavy. But it's that little tiny thing, and actually that's why I like to keep it more lighter, because actually, like, tanha itself is not that strong. But it can be everywhere, that's the thing. And it's just, it just builds up little by little. And actually it's more subtle than not. When we see something becoming more coarse, we're more at the level of attachment. We're not really at the level of tanha. Tanha is that slight discontent that makes you go like, yeah, I really gotta break my sit and stand up and walk. But attachment would be, oh, it's always like that. I always meditate for an hour, and now it's 45 minutes, and I want to break my sit, and it's not been an hour yet, or the opposite. And so, see, the difference here is that the wanting is just like on the moment. It's quite small. We can see it. It's come with a little tension. But the bigger stuff, the bigger material that is more bulky, that is more the level of attachments, and that's a bit harder to let go of. And fortunately here we're working on all three of them. But mainly going at the source, and sometimes, you know, forgiveness is good to break through like really heavy habitual tendencies or heavy attachments. And then as we meditate, we let go of these little inclinations that like would be wanting something or not wanting something, and that kind of loosens up the whole chain. And as we do this practice, so basically dependent liberation, this is our practice. This is what we do, and as we do this, this whole chain becomes lighter. So the tanha is not as strong, the attachments become not as strong, the habitual tendencies become not as strong. And the birth of action is also wiser, not as strong. So we're also creating better karma, better baggage, good baggage, punya, ping. And this wanting comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for wanting? Sensations or experience. And here is, okay, we'll go through the contact and six senses. These sensations come from a cause. They are not independent. What is the cause for sensations? Contact, yes. This contact comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for contact? The six senses, yes. So here it is where the chain becomes what it is. So we have the six senses, we have contact at any one of those six senses, and then we have a sensation arising, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That, we don't really have a choice about that. It's just the way it is. Right now, I'm sitting, my legs are crossed, I'm feeling a slight coolness on my skin. There could be more wind and it would become colder, and then there would be a sensation, it would be more tense maybe. If it was really cold, then it might become unpleasant, for example. That's just an example. The cold sensation or the burning sensation, whatever it is just a sensation. This is all raw data coming into our senses. But the thing is how we interpret that. That is how problem can arise. And so from the sensation, this is where we have the choice. And this is where we can break the chain. This is where we can use the 6 R's. When tanha arises, when the distraction brings you out, then this is where you can release, relax, see the tension that it causes, and then it gets released on the spot. It is not given more energy to grow because of your own wisdom. And so the dependent liberation, this is where we actually apply it also, at that level of sensation, between sensation and wanting, latching on. And these 6 senses come from a cause. They are not independent. What is the cause for the 6 senses? Mind and body, yes. And this is where we're getting into a deeper understanding of the mind and how it works. And I really like this analogy of the computer, because the computer is both hardware and software. And without the software, the computer is useless. And without the hardware, you can't run the software, so it's also useless. So you need both. And we need that body and mind both together to have the 6 senses operating. If there's no mind and body, this whole process doesn't work. Mind and body come from a cause. They are not independent. What is the cause for mind and body? Consciousness. Yes, vijnana. And the Buddha says, if there was no consciousness transmigrating or descending in the mother's womb, then there would not be nama rupa. There would not be this combination. So consciousness is the thing that is traveling on from one life to the next and getting into the next body, which is in line with whatever karmic baggage that consciousness is holding. And this consciousness comes from a cause. It is not independent. What is the cause for consciousness? Mental activities. Yes, very good. And so sankharas is usually translated as formations. Formations, which I always kind of had a hard time with understanding what that meant. It can be understood, but wasn't very clear to me. And now this gets quite interesting. This is the level where we start understanding that the Buddha here is saying that consciousness is basically fabricated. So, sankhara paccaya vijnana. Sankhara paccaya vijnana means mental activities create consciousness, or this is what brings up consciousness, is these mental activities, these formations in the mind. And these formations, they are just the software that we're using. And this software was coded at the level of attachment. And so this is how the wheel turns. So, built upon the 6 senses, we have pleasant or unpleasant experiences which we cling on to, and we repeat, and we look for more or look for less. And then these become attachments. And the more we repeat those, we're coding the software in the mind. And of course it becomes habitual tendencies, and then we take actions upon them. But all of these seeds, and that's also the reason why I put that other little picture there, is that this is the storehouse of all of our karmic seeds. And these seeds are just waiting for the right time to come up. And so this is the storehouse where all of our softwares and programs are either laying dormant or being active, and protracting this whole idea of consciousness. And consciousness at the level of the, when meditators get to the still and the clear mind, this is when we will, where meditators will start to understand this principle at the deepest level. So understanding dependent origination at the deepest level, where even in the clear mind, the still mind, which is very still and clear and steady and still, the mind is still has these tiny, tiny, tiny activities. And the more we spend time in that space, the more we will see that. And that awareness, actually, there is levels of density. At the beginning it is more present, it is more dense. And then as we break down the compactness, then people see that it's possible to see that this consciousness, this awareness, is only composed of trillions of little tiny mental activities that just arise and pass away. And at that point, they're just very, very, very simple mental activities. There's just basically some kind of, not restlessness, but just slight tiny activity. And then we train to see tension in this. Because at this level we will start to understand that awareness itself comes with slight, tiny, tiny, tiny tension. And it feels better to just slowly let it go. Letting go of that tiny tension. And then awareness kind of itself starts to dissipate. And this is what we call neither perception nor non-perception. Because awareness at that level loses its compactness, loses its mental activities, so much that it cannot really be discerned anymore. And at some point it kind of comes back in together again, and then there's some kind of awareness. And the Buddha said, one cannot be aware when in that state. One only is aware of that state when they come out. And there is a reflection. We called it paccavekkhana. And so, coming out of neither perception or non-perception, someone will see that, oh yeah, it was kind of, I wasn't really fully aware for a while. Like this kind of concept or like density of awareness was not there anymore. There was still some kind of residual awareness, but it wasn't like it was. And the more somebody becomes comfortable in that space, and sits for the length of time needed to really see that process. And at that point, one cannot really direct their minds to that. It just takes time to just see that process happening. Any kind of mental direction at this point is too coarse. It would just bring awareness right back. And so, by slowly getting comfortable and more in that space where we kind of get closer to the drainage divide that I was explaining. There's the marsh where there's the dry ground and there's still some kind of water, but it's not easy to discern where either of them start or end. So it's a bit of a marsh before there's a complete dry ground. And at some point one becomes more comfortable in this space and is able to really trust that release, trust the relax and let go. And at that level it's only about letting go, getting out of the way, releasing, relaxing. And then all sankharas, all mental activities completely dissipate for some time. It's hard to tell when it starts and when it stops because there's some gray areas in between. So we're not aware of that process. We'll just a meditator will know coming out that awareness was gone, and at some point it will completely be released, break apart. That usually happens around, there's no fixed time, but around 4.5 hours sit is usually a sweet spot. That seems to work for a lot of people. So 4.5 hours, usually that's a good time for the mind to have that time to really, 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 really let go. Because there's no magic. The mind takes time. It takes time to really sink down to that level of release. And then once this happens, we read that line every morning, and that's why we do. This is blissful, this is sublime, namely the stilling of all mental activities, the calming of all mental limitations, appeasement, release, Nibbāna. The mind has never experienced this much rest because there's always this tension in the mind, even though it's really wholesome, just awareness has this tension and it has a lot of baggage. And when we release that, when awareness comes back, there's great, great relief because the mind has never tasted such release, such peace, because it doesn't know what it feels like to not have awareness. It's like you have a power or current running into an electric line, and it's just made for that. It just knows, that's all it knows. It just knows how to run power. And then the power shuts down. And then it's just something it never experienced before. And so it's a very deep relief that wells up. And this is one way that we can call Nibbāna or Nirodha Samapatti. This will not last for very long the first time it happens. It's usually probably just going to be a light dip, just enough for the mind to know when it comes back that it was gone. And there's probably going to be quite a bit of relief. Even being in neither perception and non-perception, like the limit of awareness, when one spends quite a bit of time like breaking apart, even just releasing awareness itself, even if it's not fully gone, even coming out of this state can be very blissful, just very relieving. Same thing happens when there's a complete letting go. And I really like to explain this process of the mind with the murmuration of the starlings, how the mind is created, how the mind is actually just a cloud, like the murmuration of the starlings. The starlings are these little birds that fly in these murmurations, these flocks, and they make all of these patterns and shapes, and it looks like a cloud. It really looks like a dancing cloud, but in reality it's not a cloud. It's 1,000 little birds that are just beating their wings all over the place and following and dancing. And consciousness is just the same. And sometimes it becomes more release, and you can't really tell where the cloud is anymore, and then it comes back together and it starts again changing shape. And so I really like this contemplation on the nature of the mind. All of these little tiny sankharas, these little birds flapping their wings, that we've actually somehow at a deep level, that's where they are, and we've programmed them there. We've put them there. And at a deeper level of meditation, we're actually really able to see that conditioned process, that fabricated process of consciousness. And that neither perception or non-perception is really kind of, when the flock is kind of getting more expanded, it's hard to tell whether there's birds anymore or not. You kind of can tell, but it's different. It's more expanded and it's not fully there. And then they come back together and it's, oh yeah, okay. And then again expand. And at some point it's just completely the open sky. There's no more awareness, and this is sunyata. There's emptiness, voidness. But these terms, we need to understand them in the proper context, in the proper light. This is not, something you want to rush into or try to make happen. There is a gradual process to get there, and it happens quite slowly. Like I said, it takes about 4.5 hours usually to get there on good meditation. And so it's not something really to, and that void and that emptiness, it's not like a negative connotation, it's just basically, it's just like a complete release, which is not scary, but actually blissful. And if it is scary, then that means things are going too fast and we need to take a break, because none of this process is meant to be unsettling or scary, or that just means that there's something not going right. So we just calm down. Come talk to me. This process is blissful from the beginning until the middle, until the end. So you should enjoy your meditation from the moment you sit until the very end, until you stand up. It should never be a chore. If it is a chore, then something is not happening right. And what happens in this process, now this is a lot of material. This is a lot of information. And I guess the next step is to understand that what brings about and what supports all of this is avidya, lacking of discernment or lacking awareness. And it is by lacking discernment and lacking awareness that we actually gather all of these seeds, that we gather all of this process. And the lack of discernment is like the field that holds all the seeds. And we can actually develop a wholesome dependent origination. So we can, actually this is what we're doing, more and more we are reconditioning our mind to go for the wholesome, to go towards liberation, towards uplifted states. We can choose to develop and want and desire wholesomeness, to do good. That's the first step, and it's necessary to make progress. So this whole chain can also be slowly purified and turned into a wholesome action. And so the Buddha says, starting from lacking of discernment, and he will basically, my teacher used to do this, so I will say, for example, lack of discernment brings about, and you will say the next one, mental activities. So lack of discernment brings about mental activities, yes. Mental activities bring about, yes. Consciousness brings about. Mind and body brings about. The six senses bring about. Contact brings about. Sensations bring about. Wanting. Wanting brings about. Attachments bring about. Habitual tendencies bring about. I guess I said birth on this one. I have a different translation on here. Okay, birth. Birth brings about trouble. And I haven't really elaborated on this part of the transcendental or dependent origination, where one would actually take another birth in another body. But I think that's enough for tonight, so. Trouble brings about confidence. Confidence brings about relief, brings about joy, brings about relaxing, brings about happiness, brings about mental collectedness, brings about discernment, brings about disengagement, brings about agitation, brings about. Oh, wow, you guys are great. It's not even on there. I thought it would just completely be skipped. You've been listening. Very good. Liberation brings about. 100%. Next time I need to get some stickers too. Just as when it pours down heavily on the mountain tops, that water rushes down, filling up the main valleys and gorges. The main valleys and gorges being full, they fill the streams. The streams being full, they fill the creeks. The creeks being full, they fill the rivers. The rivers being full, they fill the estuaries. The estuaries being full, they fill the great ocean. And so this is how it all comes down. And we choose to feed this or not. And we also know the way out of this, which is dependent liberation, the 7 factors of enlightenment. Our practice, developing wholesome states, using the 6 R's, and we break this whole chain gradually. We weaken it. And the trouble that arises is a lot less, and there's a lot more sukha arising, not so much dukkha. And as the mind becomes liberated from all of its limitations, all of its conditionings from the past that we've picked up from God knows where, from this person that hurt us, what we did, then we let go, we release our attachments, we weaken our habitual tendencies, our capacity to respond instead of react blindly, the birth of action. It can be a wholesome birth of action. So we can respond instead of retaliate. And we become much happier. And as this whole process is happening, the mind becomes very clear, very content, very happy, and it's letting go because it sees with wisdom what is causing it trouble and what is happiness. So it keeps releasing and it keeps calming down. And as it does that, we start to see the flow of life. We're not clinging. So what happens, we know it's arising, we deal with it, we don't become agitated, and it goes. In the meditation, lights come up, storylines come up, patterns come up, forms come up, people come up. They come up, we release them, let them go. These are perspective arising and passing away, perceptions arising and passing away, sensations arising and passing away. And as we let go, all we see is it's just arising, passing away. There's no holding on. And the mind is free. So this is dependent origination. Any questions? I think that's enough for tonight. It's usually a pretty long talk, so I understand, and we had some technical difficulties at the beginning. So on this, I hope you can take all this knowledge, and you have a cheat sheet now, so you can apply this in your meditation. Remember to not take it so personal, whatever is happening, whatever is coming up. Just enjoy the release. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu.